Then we can move to the advanced report creation. But before that, just 1 or 2 slides on the reporting. So the delivered report which Workday has given, the standard reports and the espresso reports which are given by Workday. So standard reports which are given by Workday are mostly created with the same functionality of report writer, which we will be using to create the custom reports. And there are other reports as well, which are called as espresso reports. So the espresso reports are created using the different terminology in Workday, maybe a SQL query or something in the background, which they have not opened up to us. And those reports, there's a main difference between these standard reports and espresso reports, because that's where the picture comes in, and the espresso reports are not clonable. So you cannot just clone the espresso reports. They're only for you to run. You can have them run, see their output, but you cannot clone those reports, because cloning then again would enable you to have it edited and cloned in your own way. But since that terminology that they have used to create the espresso reports is not yet open to the customers or the partners, so the espresso reports are not clonable. The normal standard reports can be cloned. Standard reports, if I just go here. So here you would also see some task, copy standard report to custom report to usually clone the reports. But if you want to take a look at all the standard reports given by Workday, you can run this report, Workday standard report. And here you can just mention the categories, if any. It's not a required prompt, but if you want to mention any categories, you can mention any categories here. And based on that, worker data or former worker data history, anything you want. So based on that, all these reports will come up here for you. So here you can see if the report type is of report writer, that means this is the report which can be cloned. All the reports can be scheduled, whether it's a special report. So if you want to just take the Workday report and utilize it for your scheduling, you don't want to create a report. And that should be the ideal way as well, because if something is available in Workday, why to create your own report? So if something is already available that can be used, then you should use it. If it is only for scheduling, that also you can do. But if that needs a clone, you want to clone and maybe add your fields and want to remove some fields from the delivered one, then you can do the cloning of these reports. So the ones with the report writer, maximum of the report, it's not 100% true that every report writer report will be clonable, but most of the reports in the report writer category are clonable. And once you create the report, you clone it, you will be on the same page which we will be using to create the custom reports, because that is the terminology which is opened for normal platform, the worker, normal partners and the customers to use the report writer tool to create the reports. But the category where the type is espresso, those reports can also be scheduled, but they cannot be cloned. They can just be used to run it, schedule it, and that's it. You cannot clone and make your own by doing that. So these are some of the standard reports which are given by Workday. That's a quick quiz. Let's go through it. It will not take more than 5 minutes. So if anyone of you can go ahead with what is the data source, just in general, whatever you have understood and from your past experience as well, and from the training that we had, what do you understand from a data source?
It's a central repository where all the data is available. In Workday, data sources where all the data is available and used, especially used for reporting.
Yeah, got it. And how do we have?
One.
No, two. Standard and
No, standard
indexed.
and indexed.
Indexed.
Can you remind us, like, what is indexed? Is that, yeah.
So when you choose the data source, so now when you run a data source report in Workday, the data sources report, you will get an options to all see all the data sources. Now the data sources given by Workday are of basically two types, standard and index. The index has come in recent years, and the main difference between the standard and the indexed report is that Workday has now created some data sources with an enhanced feature of RDBMS, and you can say where you can quickly just the normal indexing, what you understand with normal indexing. If a book with index and a book without index, so if you have index, you can see the topics with the page number, and you can easily go straight away to that. So it's like searching for the resources, searching for the data inside the data source has become easier, or quite becomes easier when you are using a index data source rather than a standard data source. So from a
Okay.
performance perspective, it helps a lot. And then there comes some restrictions to the index data sources where you would have to manage with the population what it is. So not every version of the indexed every version of standard data source you have as an indexed version. So some of the data source you have an index version, but it has a population restriction as well. So whether you
Okay.
see your index data sources is meeting the requirements of the population, then you are good to use the index data source. So, and it only makes a difference when you have a subsequent amount of data. Let's say you have 50,000 workers, 1 lakh workers in your organization. Your report is complex. You have too many calculated fields. You have complex filters. So then it kind of adds up and then gives you that performance features which you are looking for. Otherwise, if you say I'm using an index data source for a 5,000 worker report, and it's a straightforward index report, and I'm just using the standard data source with the same amount of population, I'm not seeing any difference in running. So you won't feel that difference. The difference will only be feelable when you have a bigger amount of population complexities including in there. So when you have an index data source, there are also fields which are indexed in nature, which gets changed. So you can still use non-indexed fields, but while they have indexed the data sources, they have also indexed the report fields. First of all, your first approach should be to use an indexed data source. If you think that the population that you are looking for, you can
Okay.
find in an indexed data source, because let's say from current perspective, you have to design an integration. You are thinking that I only have 20 fields, and the filters are, let's say, 7, 8 rows of filters are there, and I have some normal amount of calculated field. But down the line, if you see from 5 years from now, your employee count, your contingent worker count is going to increase. The complexities, business, every other day they come up with the changes, and then the complexity gets increased. So from today's perspective, it might not feel good, but from a scalable perspective, if you think, so
Mhm.
always, if you have an option for what population you are looking for, and if you have an index data source available to you, then it is highly recommended. Even some part of the reviews as well, companies do say, if your reviewer is quite strict, they would say, okay, there is an index data source available for the same population that you are looking for. Then why don't you use the index data source? So the first thing that if you have something available, then use the indexed one first. If not, then you can go to a standard one.
Okay.
Yeah. The next question is, can we change the data source of the report once it is created? True or false?
No, we cannot change.
So you can change with
You
some.
cannot. We cannot change.
No, we can change. That's
Oh,
what I'm
we
saying.
can change? Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So
I thought only business objects can be changed. Data
no,
source
no,
cannot be changed.
no. Business objects, of course, cannot be changed. So your business object, because you don't get to choose your business object when you are creating a report, but you do get to choose the data source. And since your primary business object is attached to your data source, so if you are changing your data source, your business object automatically change. But
Okay. Mhm.
when we say that we need to change the data source of the report, it comes with the conditions that you can only change the data source if the next data source or the other data source that you are choosing are sharing the same business object. So if you are going from all
Oh,
workers to indexed workers, or if you are going from all workers to all HCM workers, so until and unless your business object is same, your primary business object is same for the data source, yes, you can change the data source. And this makes sense as well, because if you have the same business object, and if Workday have allowed to change the data sources even though the business object is not same, then all your cal fields are going to fail, because though those were created considering the primary business object, and now you have changed the data source, so your report does not make sense. You will have to create a new report. So you can change to support the existing architecture. Let's say previously you were using all workers, and now there is a requirement your report performance is getting impacted a lot. You are getting a lot of issues. The vendor is complaining. So you thought, okay, how do I do a performance improvement of this report? So, okay, first of all, you will see, okay, there is a data source available, whether which is indexed in nature. First thing which come to your mind will be that. So first thing you will do, okay, I need to change the data source. But if the data source changing has more implications, since the business object is same, yes, I can still do that, because all the calculated fields that I have created, all the delivered fields which were tagged to my primary business object can still be retained in the same report, and my structure is not going to change, and my vendor will not be impacted. Only from my internal Workday's perspective, my performance will be improved. So that's why you can change, but only when your primary business object of the next data source is same. Next question, one business object can only relate to one data source. True or false?
False.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one
false.
business object can be related to more than one data sources. They can share the same primary business object. Name a Workday report to find the business objects.
Business object details.
Correct. Difference between standard and espresso reports. We just covered it.
Standard, yeah. Standard you can edit. Espresso you can't edit.
Not edit, clone.
Not edit, yeah, clone does.
Yeah, you can clone the standard ones, but not the espresso ones. And how do we copy a standard report?
Just click on the actions and
Yeah, you have a
copy.
task as well, and you can go to the report as well,
Yeah.
then you can copy.
Yep.
Okay, that was a quick one. So now we'll move to the developing of custom reports. So once we have identified that, okay, there are the delivered reports, and my business requirement is not meeting with the delivered reports, and I really need to create a custom report of my own, then we move to the custom report. And talking in especially in terms of the integrations, when we create a custom report of type advanced, we get a feature which enables us to enable have that report works as a REST API for us, which we can expose it to the other downstreams, and they can get a feed from Workday using those custom reports. Other than that, for an integration, you can also create custom reports for the reporting purposes inside Workday, which the data will still be in-housed in Workday. You can have those reports scheduled. You can share it with the users who are able to use inside Workday, who have login credentials to use Workday. You can notify them with the outputs of when you use the scheduling. So all those things, you can still use the in-house reporting with your report features. You can still utilize the advanced features of the report. But when you really want to deliver the output outside, when you really want to expose it to the outside world other than Workday, then you'll have to enable it. You have to enable your report as a web service. So we'll focus on that part, but we'll quickly discuss the scheduling as well if possible. So creating a custom report, you have a task for it. Create a custom report. Simple report I'm not going to discuss, but I'll just do a quick brief between a simple report and an advanced report. So simple report in a term. So when you go and create a report type here, and you do create custom report, so you give your report a name. So from here, report types, you'll see a lot of types on the reporting. You'll see simple, transpose, trending, search, and box, matrix, composite. So out of these, we are going to discuss the advanced report, and here is the simple report. So we'll just quickly discuss some minor differences between a simple and the advanced report. So other than the report type that you choose here as simple and advanced, the next page is going to decide what type of features or the difference of UI you are going to see in your report. So this is a common page where you just need to define your report type and you choose your data source. So here is the first page where you're going to decide what your report would look like, what features you are going to opt. Can we choose an indexed report? Can we choose a standard data source? And what features will be available? So all those things will be decided here when you decide the data source and the report type. So these features will be common in the simple and the advanced report as well. If you choose the advanced, you still have an option to choose the data source. But one more option gets available when you choose the advanced report. So one feature is that you can enable your advanced report as a web service, but you cannot enable your simple report as a web service, which is the highly visible feature here itself. And then when you go to the data source selection, so one difference if you see here is that you cannot enable your simple report as a web service. And Workday also gives you an option to, when you hover over the type, it gives you a detailed information of what report is used by, a simple report description, advanced report description. So all these things you can read it here if you are really new to the reporting and want to understand which report I should create in which cases. So simple report is, I'll be very blunt and straight about it. Simple report is not used for integration purpose. It cannot be used. You can create just for the test purposes if you want. If you want to really review some data, if you want to quickly search about something, then you can create a simple report for your own. But from an integration perspective, in a real life world, you will not be using the simple reports anymore. So first feature is enable as web service. So you will have this feature here as well and on the next screen as well. If you forgot to do it here, you can still do it at the next page. So when you enable this report as a web, so you can have advanced reports with web service, without web service, because advanced report gives you other features as well, not just this enabling as web service. So if you want to use the advanced report features, which you're going to discuss a little later now, so you can still use it and not being using it as a web service, because this is chosen only when, and especially for the integrations team, reporting team is never going to enable this feature. So this is only used when an integration team is building their report and they're enabling it as a web service, because they would either be using this report in their studio, or they would be using this report directly to call uh, in the REST APIs to any vendors or third parties, or they would be using this report in their EIBs. So then only they will be ticking this box. Otherwise, normal reporting team would never click. And this is also not recommended, because this feature gives you a difference to identify the reports which are owned by the reporting team and the reports which are owned by the integration team. You can create.
So, Vijay, I have a question here.
Yeah.
So, for any integration type, do we check this box, enable as works web service, like let's say document transformation or EIB or whatever it is? Do we, of course, I don't think for document transformation we use reports, but
Yeah. Yes, you have to. Yes, you will have to, because otherwise your report can, so we'll understand it in the sessions of EIB, how the report works and why do you enable it. So when you want to enable it, because in the UI, when you are running, you are just seeing the output as a row and column method, and you can just directly download it as an Excel. But when we really enable the report as a web service, then the total architecture gets changed. And now you are dealing with the codes of the data. Your report will be shared as a JSON. Your report will be shared as a XML output, and then XML. So you will enable it as a web service if you want to use it in your report. Otherwise, your report itself will not be available in the studio or any other way.
Okay.
So on the data sources part, if you see here, you get to select the data source here. And there is a box here, if you see, optimize for performance. So you can check it. So if you uncheck this button, optimized for performance, which is by default checked, in the data sources, you will be able to select the data sources which are indexed and non-indexed both. So if I just see all workers, so when you are selecting the data source, you need not to go to the detail just to find if the data source is indexed or not. You can identify from this small icon itself. So if you see this cylindrical database icon, that means this data source is standard. And if you see a spark-like sign, so this would say that the data source is indexed. That means it's fast. And also in most of the data sources, you'll also find the word prefixed as well as indexed. But if it's not there, then this sign will also help you double check if the data source is indexed or not. Because when you are unchecking this button, Workday will allow you to select indexed and non-indexed any type of data source. So by this, you can select any data source which you want. But if you select the optimize for performance checkbox, and then if you make a search, then Workday will restrict your data sources to only indexed data sources. with whatever you type and whatever matches with Workday. So it will match by default the indexed all workers, because that's the only one with the all workers rating. So if you choose this button, then you are only going to select, you will only be, so sometimes this is checked and you don't remember, then just uncheck it. If you're not able to find your data sources, could be that this box is checked. That's why all the data sources were not coming up. So you can uncheck it and then you can search it. You will get the other options as well to choose your data source. So when you choose your data source, from here, it will be decided what data source you want to keep for your report. But anyways, if you have decided not to use this data source anymore, and let's say you created all workers and now you remembered, okay, that I need to go to an index data source even after you have gone live, or maybe you are still in the development phase, you can still change the data source, but that have to be in considerations that your primary business object still remains the same. If I do here, I will not enable it as a web service here. We'll do it here. You can do it here. So I just click OK. So here you will be able to see your data source editable. So if I have done this here and if I want to make a change here, I can do that. So let's say if I want to choose this one, I can change the data source. It is allowing me because my primary business object for both the data sources was same. So I can do that. And if you have forgotten to enable your report as a web service, then you can enable your report as web service here itself. So if you see here, there's a box on the advanced tab, enable as web service. So if you do here, you will be able to see, and we'll discuss this detail. What are these fields once we discuss in more?
Yeah, one small question, just like I'll be quick. Say, for example, in our department, like we have multiple departments with the different support. Say, for example, if some support want a specific for their own department purpose, they want an advanced report. So in that case, do we do like advanced reporting as a web services? Or do we do like a simple report and then just for one-time purpose, we just generate it and set them as a user so that they can generate on their own? So how we do
I
like
would
simple?
I would advise to create an advanced report without the
Mhm.
web service, since you are saying that your data will only be hosted in Workday and only be used to run in Workday and maybe get the
Only one
output.
department. Okay.
Yeah. So, and maybe I would suggest that today there is a request from one department. It could be a request
Mhm.
from other departments as well. So I would
Okay.
suggest to have a report created with a
Mhm.
prompt. We'll learn what are the prompts, with a
Okay.
prompt to enter the supervisory organization, so that now let's say one manager can enter his own superorg and he
Mhm.
can see all the details on the reportees and on and any sub superior sub organizations or any
Mhm.
down organizations to him which are reporting. So it would be scalable as well. You can enable it as a prompt rather than hard coding a particular supervisory organization and creating
Okay. Yeah.
10-20 reports.
I have seen the prompt as well. Yeah, when I
Yeah,
run a report, I can select the in the
correct,
runtime where I can select the support. Yeah. Okay.
correct. So
Is it so? Do we do that in advanced reporting?
yes, you do that
Okay.
in this reporting.
Okay. That's cool. And how we know that specific that like it will the access to that report will be given to all the members in the support, or is it like we can add some? Oh, the share.
That you can control with the share. If you, let's say, if you don't want to go with the individual users, let's say there are 10,000 managers in your organization, so
Mm-hmm.
you would not just add 10,000 users manually here with their user IDs. So rather you
Okay.
can select, okay, let's say there is a primary HR business partner, or let's say compensation manager, or just the manager. So you can decide the groups here. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
saying I only want this report to be accessible to the managers, then you can select the manager as a group, and whosoever is part of this manager group, usually the people who are
Okay,
managers.
like a role specific one.
Correct.
Okay.
So then every person who has a manager role, they would be able to access this report.
under that support if we are using that prompt?
Not under that support, they will be able to use this report in general. They would be able
In
to
general. Okay.
launch this report because they have access to this report, and they
Mm.
would be running it. They can run it for their own support, since you will be giving them a prompt to enter their own support, so that they can run it for their own support. And so
Okay.
launch access
Yeah.
will be given to everyone, but they can enter their own support in the prompt, so that the data will be shown to them. But if they want to run it for some other manager as well, they can still do it.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
So this is the one I was like struggling for a long time. Like why people are asking like this and how it is done. Okay, I got the answer.
Okay.